And the next speaker is a girl. And the first intention I had was Catwoman. I don't know why. So then I recognized I've never seen a picture with Catwoman and her at stage at the same time. Maybe. But I guess she will deny everything. But next on stage is Lamis.
Lamis.
I've met her at this conference the first time, and I was really shocked why I haven't met her before, why I've never recognized her before, because she is a very nice person. I love her sense of humor. You have to, good, okay, I'm a German, so maybe every sense of humor is better than me, but too much jokes about German. So I loved her sense of humor, so get in touch with her. And it's your first talk on an international conference.
Yeah.
So give it up for Lamis.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So how is it going? Good. Hope that you're enjoying the conference so far, as I am enjoying it. Yeah, I'm very happy to be here talking about a subject I've been working on for quite some time now. So welcome to Keep Calm and Embrace Real-Time Angular Components. A little bit before I start about myself. So I'm a senior software engineer based in Tunisia. I'm working for a company named Vermec. And I've been into Angular for the past few years. And I'm also involved in women empowerment community. I'm a member of WWCode Community and WWCode Frontend. And I do a lot of mentoring, training, and content creation. So let's get the ball rolling. OK. We live in a real-time society where people want everything immediately. I mean, waiting is no more an option. And the impulse for instant gratification is really powerful. It's everywhere, and it's spreading like wildfire. And this has changed our way of thinking and how we deal with many things, and especially the data. And the speed at which the data is delivered is crucial in many fields. I mean, the quicker you get the data, the sooner you can react and make decisions, and though the chances of higher profit are huge. And here are a few areas where I believe real-time can be a game changer. For instance, live financial trading, live tracking system, live monitoring and analytics, and healthcare. And the question now is how you can handle these real-time changes in your web apps, and especially in your Angular application. And this is the heart of my talk today. I'll be taking you through the whole story from design to implementation. But before we jump right into it, let's talk some history. So the web has been built like 30 years ago. It was built on the back of the HTTP protocol, which was designed entirely as a request-response protocol. I mean, it was built around the idea that the client's job is to request information from the server, and the server's job is to fulfill those requirements. And this was enough in the early days of the web. But moving forward, the demands on the internet has increased, largely driven by consumer expectations for richer user experience, smoother interactions, and real-time capabilities. And people started to explore the possibilities of making this communication bidirectional to fulfill those requirements. And there are two big approaches, if you want: the client pull or the server push. I don't want to go much into the details of each solution. I mean, every solution has its pros and cons, and it really depends on the use case. But this enabled a whole generation of real-time application, and WebSockets are one of the server push solutions available over there. I think you may all be familiar with the WebSocket protocol. which is, unlike HTTP, it's a stateful protocol, which has landed with HTML5, and it's useful when you need low latency, persistent, bidirectional communication between the servers. So you need to send data to the server, and the server can push data to the client. And the WebSocket protocol enables the full duplex bidirectional communication after a successful handshake done through HTTP. And this handshake is kind of telling the server, hello, I want to speak a different language. And if the server understands this language, then a protocol upgrade in the front-end layer. So this is what you will see in your browser network, the 101 switching protocols. Yeah, and this is the protocol I ended up using to achieve real-time updates in my Angular application. I want my Angular components to react instantly to changes without having to hit a refresh button or triggering any kind of event. This is my requirement, right? Now, let's think of it in an abstract way and imagine together how things should work. I will have a data provider producing data over time, or to be more accurate, producing different versions of the data over the time, a UI component displaying these data, the DOM representation of this UI component, and as we're speaking about a stream of data over time, so it's obviously asynchronous, so we'll need, for sure, an asynchronous data structure that will listen to those changes, push the updates to my components, which will react by re-rendering. Well, this is the whole picture. Now, what technologies do we need to fulfill this? I break it down into 3 pieces, if you want, or units. We'll need an asynchronous data structure, and for this, I'll be using RxJS as a reactive library. I'll need a unit to manage the state tracking and the screen updates. And as I'm working with Angular, I don't have to worry about this part because this is one of the most powerful features of Angular, and it's improving from one release to another, so it's very performant also. And this is where frameworks come in handy. I mean, they take off some weight off our shoulders, so I don't have to worry about this part. Angular do the job for me. Now for the WebSocket management, in the client layer, of course, I had 2 options, whether to use plain JavaScript or using a library. But I need to save time, and I don't want to reinvent the wheel. So I started looking for a ready-to-use library, and there are a lot of great libraries over there. But again, I don't want to include additional third-party dependency in my Angular project every time I have a new feature to include, because this will increase my bundle size and hence my build time. I have to consider the license, the maintainability, the compatibility, and all this stuff. So I would rather search in the Angular ecosystem first. And I found something useful in the Angular ecosystem, which is this RxJS WebSocket, available in the RxJS library. And this really suits me because RxJS is a first-class citizen in Angular. So I don't have to include any third-party library. I have the support out of the box. So let's look closer in this RxJS WebSocket subject. By definition, it's a wrapper around the W3C comparable WS object provided by the browser, and it allows to both send and receive messages via WebSocket connection. It's nothing but a regular observable in RxJS, a regular subject in RxJS. I mean, I see subjects in RxJS as observers and observables at the same time. So you can subscribe to and emit events. And in order to use this, all that you have to do is calling the factory function available in the RxJS package that takes as a parameter your WS endpoint. And you can use WSS for secure WebSocket connections. This function will produce a WebSocket subject. It's a special kind of subject that you can subscribe to in order to establish a connection between your client and your server. And starting from this point, you can receive messages. You can also register callbacks to be notified if there is an error or if the connection closed for whatever reason. And in the other way around, you can send messages to your server by calling the next method. And once you're done, you just call complete or unsubscribe to this WebSocket subject, and this will close the connection. Now, this is the life cycle. At this point, some questions cross my mind, such as, does many subscribers mean different socket connections? I mean, if I have only one instance of WebSocket subject and I have many subscribers, did that mean that I have many sockets connections? The answer is no. Many subscribers will listen always to the same stream, to the same socket connection. Next question, does socket connection close when a consumer unsubscribes, as there are many subscribers and the unsubscribe completes the connection? Does this close the connections for the others, for the other subscriber? The answer again is no. So when a subscriber unsubscribes, the connection will only close if no more other subscribers are still listening. That's cool. Now, how to handle reconnection? Well, for this part, there's no support for the reconnection mechanism in the RxJS WebSocket subject, neither do the WebSocket API. But as you are working, again, with RxJS, you can do a solution yourself by picking up one of the operators, for example, take until or something, to manage the reconnection process. Now, next question, are outgoing messages lost when connection is done? So if I am sending messages to the server and the connection is closed for whatever reason, my messages will be buffered. I mean, they manage buffering for us. And this was cool again. Now, last but not least, we're about customization. So in order to specify, let's say, custom behavior in specific moments of the WebSocket lifecycle, you can create the WebSocket this way. And, for example, put your deserialization method. By default, for deserialization, JSON.parse is used, but you can here customize and apply any transformation of your choice. You can also apply any transformation when about serialization. For outgoing messages, the method stringify is used, for serialization. You can also intercept the opening and the closure of the connections. So this is an example of configurable properties, but there are a lot of properties that you can configure. And if you want to check out the whole list of these properties, just check out the link at the bottom of my slide I'll be posting later. You find them in the RxJS official documentation. Now at this point, I think we went through all the basics of this RxJS WebSocket subject. One more thing to consider is, what's that? Okay, is the recommended pattern to use before implementing. And here, I recommend to put all your WebSocket management logic in a service that you will inject in your live component or real-time component. And after that, in this component, you will subscribe to that subject. We need a break now. You need to see something. So I'll be showing you. I will ensure that my server is started up. I'm using a Node.js server for my WebSockets, and I'll show you here a little bit. Yeah, this is my cache management dashboard. Is it clear from behind? Okay, so I have here a cache management dashboard. It's written with Angular 8. I'm using only Angular 8 and PrimeNG as my component libraries. And as you can see here, there is one real-time component, which is the table responsible of showing my transactions. I mean, this is all fake. It doesn't make sense. Don't concentrate. Fake data. So yeah, here you can see some real-time updates, and my grid is updating every 2 seconds. There's nothing fancy. I'll show you the code. Yeah. So here I will show you briefly my Node.js server. It's not the scope of the talk, but just to, yeah, here I'm using the WS package. It's very popular when you're dealing with Node.js server. And you can find here the implementation of my WebSocket as it's an event-based protocol. So you just put what you want when the connection is established, when the message is received, when an error occurs, and so on and so forth. So this is the most important file in my backend. And in my front end, you see here the data service I pointed out in the recommended pattern slide, if you remember. This is the service where I manage my WebSockets. So I have a single instance of the WebSocket subject. Here I use the connect. I have the connect method that opens or creates a WebSocket subject if there is no subject created. I put here my endpoint in the environment just to put it once. And yeah, this method is for close connection that completes the connection. Send message to call the next method and send a message to the server. And I always add this method. Okay, so this is, as it's in observable, so I always extract as it's a subject, sorry, I always extract the observable to just expose this to the external world. I mean, I don't want every component to manipulate my WebSocket subject directly. So I just provide this method to use the observable to be kind of secure. And so this is my WebSocket service. Now my live table component is here. Now this is the test folder. Okay, what I will do here, I have my transactions observable. This observable will hold the list you saw of the transactions. And I only subscribe, I call this method, I subscribe to, and I just populate my observable with the most recent data using the pipe and map operators. And here I just inject the servers, of course. And one thing more, in my HTML component, I just subscribe to this observable using the pipe async. And this way also, I am done with the unsubscription. When my component is destroyed, this will the subscription for this observable will be released. And one more thing again, in the onDestroy method, I close the connection just to unsubscribe to the socket object. That's it. I kept it as simple as possible, just 3 steps, and you're done with the most simple case of the WebSocket. I mean, you have to add a service, subscribe to the observable, inject the service in your component, and you're done. Another thing to consider here is the change detection. I'm using the on-push change detection strategy of Angular to gain in performance, of course. Yeah, so that's it. That's the code, as simple as possible. Now let's come back to the slides. Another cool feature I want to show you, it's the multiplexing. So in the previous demo, I had only one real-time component, but in real life, you may have many. And they may be also related to separate services deployed in different machines, and only the UI is combining them together. So it would make sense to establish a connection for each service. Don't do this. This is very resource expensive and it will harm your performance. Instead, a common pattern is to implement a gateway that will, this is your WebSocket endpoint. It will route to the other services. So this way you have only one socket connection because you have only one WebSocket server. And in the client layer, even if there is only one socket connection, manipulating streams as if they were coming from different services is desirable. So this is where multiplexing can help. We will learn by example. So the multiplex method is called on the WebSocket subject. It produces an observable. It takes into parameter it takes three parameters. The first two are subscription and unsubscription messages that will be sent to the server, respectively, when we subscribe to this observable and when we unsubscribe. And what for is just a hint for the server to tell him, okay, start to send messages for, in this example, alerts, or stop sending messages for this alerts. And in the third parameters is to filter in the client layer the messages and to deliver the messages to the adequate components. I mean, only the components that subscribe to the alerts observable will receive, for example, this messages. So it's kind of, routing the messages to the adequate component. So this is, I recommend this pattern for this multiplexing if you have more than one real-time components. Now let's push it into the next level and briefly, if you want to over-engineer and to deal with large-scale application, it's highly advisable to deal with state management. So I dealt with NGRX to manage the state of my application. Just to achieve more pure components and to gain in performance, I have isolated the code dealing with the WebSocket management, the subscription to the observable, and the effects part. And in my component, I only select the state and dispatch the action. And of course, in the reducer, every time you update the store with the most recent data. So I don't want to deep dive in the details, but I will put this. I will put a version with NGRX and a version without in my GitHub later. Now, some performance tips. Consider to use change detection strategy, use the directive track by if you are dealing with NG4, consider state management, lazy loading, IV rendering also. And you can play around with it. And if you are dealing, for example, with messaging servers, RabbitMQ or something, and you have a queue that your WebSocket consume, I really recommend also to use the Stomp.js library. You find the link at the bottom of my slides. It's really fun dealing with WebSocket, and I really also recommend to combine them with Google Analytics and some real-time databases. You will for sure enjoy it. And finally, RxJS. I think that RxJS is genuinely amazing. I mean, it makes dealing with WebSocket delightfully simple. And the moment I think that you start to think reactively, you will be able to do many things, and it will be handy in many situations. This talk was one of the situations I think RxJS can shine. So this was my quote. I don't know how you find it. Once you start thinking reactively, magic will start happening and you will get wings. Okay. Thank you very much for having me. That's all I have to tell you today. This is I will be posting my slides later, so you can find some good resources. And don't hesitate to contact me if you have any question. I'll be here the whole day if you want to reach out. Follow me on Twitter. I'll be sharing the slides. And big shout out to Michael. The last name of Michael? Latke, cool, who helped me make these slides look so much better. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Thanks.